Hey guys, so this first lesson we're going to start with social studies, and so if you want to grab your books and open up to page 90 and just kind of go along with me, then we can go through it, and then we're going to be using this worksheet right here. Geography, our country's geography, has the picture at the top and the keywords and then a couple questions. So we're going to use that with some of these pages so far. So if you open up to page 90, lesson 2, our country's geography, we're going to talk about geography, and we talked about how geography is the study of the earth. Geo means earth, ography is the study of. So we are going to look at, we've talked about landforms, we've talked about continents, oceans, hemispheres, the equator, that the states in the U.S. We've talked about those. Those are all part of geography. So we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to look at landforms today. So on page 90, all places on Earth have features that make them special. Some of these are physical features, so things that you can actually see. Physical features include land, water, climate, plant life. So everything that fits into those categories are considered physical features. So land features is what we're going to look at first. You can describe a place by listing its physical features. Many communities have both land and water features. So when we think of our community around the school, we have lots of pine trees, lots of oak trees. We don't have mountains, but we might have some small little hills. We have rivers, we have streams, we have lakes. Think about when it flooded, all those rivers and lakes that didn't have enough place for all that water to go, way back when. So we had that flood that one year. But those are all physical features. Now, when we talk about land features, that is where we go into the different land forms. So the United States is a large country with many kinds of landforms. A large area of plains called the Great Plains stretches across the middle of our country. And we've looked at that when we were talking about prairie dogs. If you think back to when we did the reading in Pila on prairie dogs, we looked at the Great Plains. And if you remember, Great Plains is wide open spaces, nice and flat, very, very few trees, lots of grass, lots of dirt, and it's right in the middle of the U.S. Often plains lie along a coast. The coastal plain stretches along the Atlantic Ocean and along the Gulf of Mexico. So we also have a coastal plain in South Carolina, and I will try to post a picture of the different areas of South Carolina for you to see. But the coastal plain is a narrow strip right along the coast, and it's mainly because think about when you go to the beach, you don't see a lot of trees. It's just mainly flat. You have some dunes, but it's still, flat sand, that kind of thing. Like other landforms, mountains can be different shapes and sizes. There are many mountain ranges in the United States. A mountain range is a chain of mountains. So not just one mountain, but a whole chain of mountains. So when we look at, let me find, so it's going to be backwards for you, but when we look at our map of the U.S., okay, here's South Carolina, okay, we have a chain of mountains that come along right here. That's the Appalachian Mountains. So if you've gone to Asheville or in Tennessee, then you're in these mountains right here. And it's not just one or two, but they stretch all the way down. And then out west, if you've gone towards California or Arizona, out that way, you have another chain, not just one or two, but a whole chain. And when you think chains, think about like chains, how they're connected together. All these mountains are connected together. These are the Rocky Mountains, which are out west. So not only are they in the U.S., but they're in other countries as well. So that's one physical feature. Back on page 91, the Appalachian Mountains in the eastern United States are low and rounded. So they're tall, but they're not like huge. Like you can climb the mountains, you can travel through the mountains, but it's not like you've heard of Mount Everest, okay? This huge mountain that people try to climb all the time. It's not like that. It's just a regular mountain chain, okay? The Rocky Mountains in the west are tall and sharply pointed. So if you were to go out west, like say you were to fly to California, you would fly over the Rocky Mountains, and when you look out your window of the plane, you would be able to see the mountains, and they're just this long connecting chain. But they're taller. The Rocky Mountains are taller than the Appalachian Mountains, and like it says, the Appalachian Mountains are more like curved and nice and flowy, and the Rocky Mountains are more like jagged and pointy. Other landforms include valleys. So you know when you have two mountains that come together down towards the bottom. If you look on page 91 of your book, where it dips down, okay, that's a valley down in there, where the bottom of two mountains meet. That right in there is going to be your valley, okay? It's a low area of land that lies between hills or mountains, so you can have a valley in between some rolling hills, but you would see it more in a mountain setting. A plateau is a landform with steep sides that rise to a flat top. So think of like a three-sided square, right? So a plateau is going to be a piece of land, and they have a lot of them out west in Arizona. It's like desert, and then you have it's a piece of a mountain, but it's been weathered to where it looks like a square. So it's kind of looks like a square, but without the bottom. The bottom would be the ground, of course, but kind of like a top hat, nice and square. You can climb up them, you know, that kind of thing. But it's like a mountain, but a mountain's kind of pointy or nice and round. A plateau is a big square. If you go ahead and turn to page 92, we're going to look at some water. We've talked about a lot of water in class, like with science and a little bit of social studies. So bodies of water are another kind of physical feature. The largest bodies of water are the oceans, right? When we look at our maps, we know that the oceans are the larger things, right? On the continents are many smaller bodies of water. So remember, we've talked about how we get big and then we get smaller and smaller and smaller, okay? So you have the big oceans, and then you go down smaller, and we've talked about this. We have the lakes, and then we have the ponds, and then we have the rivers, and then we have the streams, right? And like we have that stream that runs right beside the school. So that's one of the smaller bodies of water. Not a ton of water in our stream next to the school, but it's still water, right? Most of these contain fresh water. Lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams are freshwater, which means they don't have salt, like when you go to the ocean and you go swimming and you swallow that water and it's really salty. Ponds, lakes, rivers, streams, they're not like that. You may have a few lakes that do have salt, but that's like a special circumstance. Most of these certain freshwater or water that is not salty, fresh water after it is treated, is the kind of water that we drink and use in our homes. So we don't get our water from the ocean. We get the water from lakes, rivers, streams, ponds, that kind of thing. So if you look on page 92, okay, 92 is going to show you all the different kinds. There's tons of kinds of landforms and water forms and things like that. And 92 is going to show you just a few of them. You have the wetlands. And the wetlands is also known as, like, you could have marshes. So if you've ever been to like Murrells Inlet or anything near there, near Beaufort, they have all kinds of wetlands and marshes, right? Then of course your island. Your island, as you've learned before, is surrounded entirely by water, okay? So not Florida. Florida is not an island. Florida only has water on 3 sides, and then it's land at the top. But an island is like Hawaii. There's water all the way around, right? The Gulf is a little piece of water that moves. Think of like the Gulf of Mexico by Texas and Florida and Louisiana and Mississippi. Okay, we have that little inland of water where it's not closed on this side, but it's closed on the other sides. Then of course you have your river, which you can have water flow from the ocean or the Gulf into the river. A lot of times, like our rivers from up north in the United States, they flow down into the Gulf, which then goes into the ocean. Okay, you can have a waterfall, which comes from a lake. So you have a lake, and then you have a waterfall where that area of land can't hold all the water, so it has to go somewhere. So it overflows, and it creates a waterfall, and it goes into another body of water. If you look at page 93, lakes and rivers, the United States has many bodies of fresh water. The Great Lakes, which we've talked about, there's 5 of them. Remember, I said 4. Y'all corrected me. Said 5. I miscounted. Remember. So there are 5 Great Lakes. There's a chain located in the northeastern United States along the border with Canada. So remember, when you look at the maps, not a great map to look at, but remember we did use this one, Great Lakes, and then you have Canada, so they kind of split the border, okay? Remember that? And it asked you, we talked about the largest one, and we looked at the smallest one. Together they form the largest group of freshwater lakes in the world. The Mississippi River flows from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. Many other rivers, such as the Ohio River, flow into the Mississippi. Many communities are built near bodies of water. You might describe your community as being near an ocean, a lake, or a river. Some communities are located on an island, which is land that has water on all sides. So, why do people need to live near water is a question that you're probably thinking. We've talked about, you can't survive without water, right? You can only go so long without water. Plants need water. You need water to drink, bathe, shower, wash, cook with, right? We've talked about all these things before when we did science and talked about having clean water, not having it polluted. So a lot of people try to settle or live near where there's a lake or a river or a stream where they can get water for these purposes, especially if they're farmers, right? Because if it doesn't rain, where are you going to get water from? You're going to get it from the lake, the river, the stream, whatever, because if you don't have water for your plants don't grow, right? We've talked about that before. So if you flip back to page 99 again, we're using this map a lot, but right in here, coming from Lake Michigan, past Lake Erie, Lake Superior, it's so tiny I can't see. Mississippi River starts up here near Canada, and it flows all the way down here, and it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. And so a lot of people use this as fishing, as water, to travel. We talked about boats traveling, and we have other rivers that come in to the Mississippi, and they come from all different directions, and then they all flow down, okay? So those are water. Now, we're going to skip a couple pages, but we're going to come back to them later, okay? We're going to skip page 94 and 95, and we're going to go to 96 and 97. So if you look at page 96 and 97, we're looking at the landforms, okay? Now, the mountains just don't pop out of nowhere, right? They got to come from somewhere. The plateaus, the canyons, the valleys, they all have to come from somewhere. And so they go through what's called a physical process. So if you look at page 96, okay, we're looking at physical process. Earth is always changing. These changes are often the result of physical processes. Physical processes affect all things on Earth. So, changes to Earth. Some physical processes are slow. They take millions of years to change Earth. One slow process is erosion. Erosion is the wearing away of the Earth's surface. So, if you have, let's say you have a large rock, okay, and it's constantly raining, it's windy, it's got all kinds of things are brushing up on it, it's slowly gonna wear that rock away, and the rock is gonna get smaller and smaller and smaller, okay? Think of if you have, like when you're playing in the dirt, and you pick up a dirt ball, you know, it's hard, and then you rub it, and you have all this sand that falls off, right? And then what happens to the ball that you're rubbing? It gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you just crush it and it's gone, right? So that's kind of like what erosion is. Water rubs up against it and slowly rubs things away. Wind brushes against it and rubs things away. So it takes something and it makes it like a rock, and it would make it smaller and smaller and smaller. So water, wind, and sand can all cause erosion. Running water erodes riverbanks. Winds carry sand, which wear away at any rock. So think about like when we've talked about you're outside and the wind blows and you have on shorts and you're on the playground or you're at the beach, and that wind picks up the sand and it stings your legs. We've talked about that before, and it hurts. That wind that picks up the sand and carries it away, it's just like it hurts your legs aren't going to erode away. They're not going to disappear. But if you were a rock or a piece of land, after years and years and years and years and years of that sand beating against you, it would eventually start to go away. And so that's what happens here with erosion. Other physical processes happen very quickly. So erosion takes many, many, many years. It doesn't happen like in a week. It takes years, okay? Movements in layers of rock deep beneath Earth's surface can cause earthquakes. So earthquakes even cause changes in our Earth. Hawaii is formed by volcanoes, right? So that's a change in Earth. You have this volcano, and as it has exploded over thousands of years, it has formed an island. Like it just keeps building on each other, right? And it's eventually sticking out of the water, and now people live on it. So that's changed. Earthquakes more or less go the opposite way. Things go down. So you have lots of valleys and things like that that are caused by earthquakes. So you have earth changes not only with erosion, but in other aspects of the earth. Earthquakes, volcanoes, that kind of thing. It all changes the landscape, and that's what we're looking at with physical processes. Then you also have changes in the ecosystem. So on page 97, a physical process or physical processes affect ecosystems in every day. An ecosystem is made up of the plants, animals, land, water, and climate that make up an area. Now we've talked about this a little bit when we did habitats, and we talked about the animals and the habitats and how, you know, polar bears would not live in the desert, right? Cactuses wouldn't grow in the Arctic, that kind of thing. So the ecosystem, again, is made up of what type of plants, what type of animals, what type of land, water, climate. So think of a desert. A desert is an ecosystem, okay? So the plants, you have the bushes, like the tumbleweeds, you have the cactuses or cacti, right? You wouldn't find those anywhere else. that would be in that ecosystem. You have animals. We've talked about the like scorpions and spiders and the mice and the larger animals, the lizards and things like that live in the desert. Those are native to those areas. The land, you have the desert, right? It's flat, it's hilly, lots of sand, not really many greenery, right? The water, very little, right? So you can have a ton of water in an ecosystem. You can have a little bit of water in an ecosystem. And of course, the desert ecosystem is very little water. The climate, of course, is hot, muggy, very little rain, right? We've talked about that. So you can also have a swamp as an ecosystem. The types of plants that grow in a swamp are used to lots of water. The animals that live there, think of the fish, alligators, those kind of things. You would find those mainly in a swamp ecosystem. The climate would be very muggy and very sticky. If you've ever gone through the swamp section with the alligators at like the zoo, you walk into that building and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so hot, right? That's part of that ecosystem. That's what they're used to. So back on page 97, plants and animals in an ecosystem need each other to survive. Trees in a forest provide food and shelter for the animals. In turn, the animals spread the seeds of the trees. Trees also provide shade for other plants. And we've talked about that when we talked about habitats before. Plants and animals all work together, right? Not only do plants provide food for the animals, but it's a place for the animals to live, to hide from larger animals. And if the animals eat, let's say they eat the berries off the bush, right? Well, we know what happens. We've talked about this when we talked about seeds being carried, right? You might eat a bush over here or a berry over here, and then 3 days later you're way over there, and the animal does what? He poops, and then the poop is the seed, and then the seed starts to grow, and you have another plant. Like we've talked about that, right? So you can't have an ecosystem without plants and animals, right? They work together to help spread it. If you now look at this, our country's geography, okay, you have across the top, turn my page, right, you have mountain range, plateau, erosion, ecosystem, and valley. And that's pretty much what we just read about, okay? So number one, I'm a landform with a flat top and steep sides. So remember, it's the landform that's similar to a mountain, but it's not rounded or pointed at the top. It's square on 3 sides. If you need to go back into your book, I think you should know this. I think you do know this. But if you go back to 91, when we're looking at land features, that's what it's asking you. Which land feature is flat top and steep sides, okay? Number 2, I am all the plants, animals, land, water, climate of a place. What am I? Now that one we just talked about. So the whole place that has everything in it, okay? We talked about the desert. We talked about the swamp, right? If you need help with that one, which I don't think you do, I think you know this, that one, you go to page 97. Now, remember, these words are all of our key terms for this lesson and the reading. All right, number 3, I am the wearing away of Earth's surface caused by water, wind, or sand. Now, this one is going to be what causes the landforms to change, with the wind blowing, the sand blowing, the water running constantly. What is that physical process gonna be to wear away parts of the earth? Okay, if you need help with that one, it's going to be on page 96. Number 4, a chain of mountains called the Appalachians is an example of what I am. So again, your choices are up here. we have the Appalachians in the east, we have the Rockies in the west, okay? If you've gone to parts of North Carolina or Tennessee, you've been in these Appalachian things before. So what is that? If you need help with that, that again is going to be on page 91. And then number 5, I'm a low area of land between hills. So remember, we talked about in between each hill you have that dip, right? Or between mountains you have that dip. What is that thing at the bottom? So if you look at the mountains when it comes down, right? So what is that called? Again, if you need help with that, that one's on page 91 as well. So just a little review of what we read. Now, also, we looked a lot at the map on page 97. No, excuse me. On page 98 and 99. The ones, this one right here, okay? Now, we've talked about maps, we've looked at maps, we've used maps a little bit, however, we didn't talk about the types of maps. But one type of map is called a landform map, and that map is going to show you, like on page 98, 99, we're going to use the key. And remember, the key tells you what everything stands for. So in this case, on page 98, 99, the key is going to tell us which each color stands for. So a physical map, like on page 98, 99, okay, you have the purples, the purple color, which are the mountains, which we talked about already, the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains, right? So those mountains are colored in purple. Then you have the plateaus are in the orange color. So everywhere that you see orange, which is mainly out west, you have a little bit in the east near us, but in the west you have a lot of plateaus. You have a lot of mountains over there. The Rocky Mountains are huge. They're much bigger than the Appalachian Mountains, and all around them they have plateaus. Then you have your yellow, which are your hills, right? So leading up to the mountains, you kind of go over some hills and then you get in the mountains, or as you come back down, same thing. So we have some hills rolling through our Great Plains, okay? So it's not completely flat. It mainly is, but every now and then you'll catch a hill, okay? And a little bit around our Appalachian Mountains here. And then the plains, which we know, okay? The Great Plains here in the middle, right? All of that is green. And then we have some plains over here, and we're pretty flat. Now we have more trees and grasses and bushes and things like that than you would in the Great Plains, but we're pretty flat. We don't have a lot of hills over here. So a landform map can be anywhere. We're looking at the one of the U.S. You can look at the one of the world. You can look at the one of Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia. You can look anywhere and see the different landforms in those countries as well. So if you turn to your worksheet and your workbook, that's the uses of landform maps. We're going to do that really quick. So you have a map, okay, and then you have your key, which is going to tell you what each symbol represents. So in the book, page 98, 99, we have colors, right? So here we have Great Lakes Plains is in the dark color. You have your teeny tiny polka dots is going to be your teal plains. Your little dashes, so the section that has little dashes is going to be the bluegrass region. And then your dots that are spaced out a little bit more are going to be your Appalachian Plateau, okay? So we're going to use this key to look at different areas of Ohio to answer these questions, okay? So number 1 says, what plateau is in the eastern part of the state? So when you look at it, you have your compass rose, right? That's always on a map, tells you directions. We talked about north, south, east, and west. Never eat soggy waffles, remember? So mine's going to be backwards to y'all. But if you look at the east, right? So the E's here. So when you look at this side, okay, we look at, it's covered in polka dots, right? Now we have to decide, are those polka dots very close together, which would mean it would be the Till Plains, or are they going to be a little bit further apart and be the Appalachian Plateau? So we got to look at that. And we come to the conclusion that these dots are further apart, which means it's going to be the Appalachian Plateau. Number 2 says, which physical feature forms Ohio's border on the south and east? So remember, you have the south down here, you have your east over here. So what physical feature? Now, physical features can be, we talked about how they can be landforms. We've also talked about how they can be water forms. So we're talking about the border, and we've talked about borders a ton. Science, social studies, your vocabulary. Border is what outlines it. So when you look at Ohio, what borders Ohio to the south and to the east that stops it from becoming West Virginia or Kentucky? What is that thing called? And that's going to be the Ohio River. So just like you have the rivers, the Great Lakes that border parts of the U.S. and Canada, it separates it, right? This Ohio River separates Ohio from any other state. So you know once you cross that river, now you're in Ohio, right? Number 3, is the Scioto River north or south of the Great Lakes Plains? So first, you have to find the Great Lakes Plains, and according to our key, it is that dark shaded in color, which is all this area up here, okay? Now we have to find the river that it's talking about. So the Scioto River, if we look at all the rivers, which are dark lines on this map, sometimes our maps are in color, and remember, on maps, rivers, lakes, oceans, ponds, all those things are going to be blue on a colored map because water is what? Water is blue, okay? So we have our plains area up here that they were talking about, and then we have our river right here underneath. So is it north or south? Well, we have our compass rose, but we also know north and south already. So if this is up here and this is down here, then the river is going to be what to the plains? It's going to be south, right? Number 4, which river is in both the Till Plains and the Appalachian Plateau? So again, we're going to use our key. Till Plains is the polka dots that are super, super close together. So that's this half of Ohio, okay? And then our Appalachian Plateau, we've already talked about, is this part. So we need a river that is in both of these sections here, right? So let's see. So we could do the Ohio River because it goes across the bottom of Ohio, which crosses both different parts. The Muskegon River would only be in the Appalachian Plateau, so that wouldn't work because it has to be both. The Great Miami River is only here, so that one wouldn't work because your clue is that has to be both the Till Plains and the Appalachian Plateau. Would not be any one of these rivers up here because they're only in one section. So your only other option besides choosing the Ohio River would be the fact that it would be this Scioto River. Because if you look, it starts up here. It's in this side of Ohio, which is the Till Plains. And as it goes down, it crosses over into the Appalachian Plateau. Okay. Number 5. Which physical feature is further west? The Muskegon River or the Till Plains? So we're going to use this. So we got to find the river. Well, we've already talked about the river. So that's over here, right? It's right here. Okay. And that is in the Appalachian Plateau. And then it's asking you the Till Plains. And we know the Till Plains is the section over here that has a teeny tiny little dots in it. Okay. So now it's asking you which one is further west. So we're going to use our compass rose. Here's west. So it's going to be on this side. So which one is further to this side of Ohio? Is it going to be this river, or is it going to be this area right here? Further west, it's going to be the Till Plains. The river's here. This is west. This is the plains. Okay? So that's how you read a map, physical map, and try to figure out what everything is. So tomorrow we will look at, we'll go back and do page 94 and 95, talking about climate and weather, which we've done a lot already with science, so this should be a quick review. And looking at the seasons, which you've done for years since kindergarten and pre-K. So 94 and 95 is just a quick review, nothing new. And then we will move on and talk about the different regions of the U.S., which, with our 50 state songs, we've kind of talked a little bit about them, but we haven't really addressed their different regions, which are different areas of the U.S. So we'll get to that in the next video. Okay? If y'all have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right? See y'all later.